Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Playmakers. What's up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going through my start sits at the quarterback position. So I'm going to break down all 14 Week 10 matchups, and thumbnails are going to be down below. If you guys just want to jump around to your specific quarterbacks, that is totally fine. You can find those in the description, but all I ask is that if you guys enjoy the content, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We're getting so close to 1,000 subs. So thank you guys so much for that. And then you can ask me any fantasy questions down below, waiver wire questions, trade advice, start sits, anything. If you drop it down below, I'll be responding to every single comment. But let's just jump into the Thursday night football game where we have the Ravens traveling to Miami to take on the Dolphins. And for me, Lamar Jackson is a no-brainer start every single week. The man continues to ball out. And then for the Dolphins, Tua has shown some flashes this year of being a solid fantasy quarterback, but then he goes out and misses week 9, which I believe was due to a finger injury, so we don't even know if he's going to be back. But right now, I just don't trust Tua or Jacoby Brissett in my lineup. Then moving on to Sunday, we have a divisional game between the Bills and the Jets, and this one is a no-brainer for me with Josh Allen. Even though he's coming off of a terrible game against the Jaguars, he is still a top-tier fantasy quarterback, and the Jets are a great team to have a bounce-back win against. And then on the other side with the Jets, very weird situation here where Zach Wilson has really struggled to start off the season. Then they bring in Mike White. He balls out. Then Mike White gets hurt. And Josh Johnson looks like Tom Brady out there is just balling out. I don't trust it, this week or long term. I think whoever they end up starting is going to be a sit. So whether it's Zach Wilson, Mike White, or Josh Johnson, I'm just going to be sitting all three of those guys. Then let's move on to the Buccaneers Washington football team game. Tom Brady locked in start every single week, especially here against the Washington football team. This is a really nice matchup. Even if he doesn't have AB or Gronk, I think he still gets it done with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and then you've got some solid depth there at wide receiver with Scotty Miller coming back, Tyler Johnson, so he's good to go. And then even though this isn't a terrible matchup for Taylor Heineke, he just hasn't had a ton of consistency as of late, so he is going to be a sit for me. Falcons Cowboys is up next, and I'm actually going to be starting both of these quarterbacks. Matt Ryan has looked much better as of late. This can be a Cowboys defense, but they really thrive on forcing turnovers. So if Matt Ryan can hold on to the ball, I think he can have a really nice game ahead of him. And then Dak Prescott, the final box score didn't look that terrible for him, and the overall fantasy numbers, I think he had over 18 fantasy points. He pretty much looked terrible the majority of that game, but still he's a mid-tier QB1 rest of season, so I think he's a lock back in your lineup. I mean, last week was just so strange across the board, so many upsets. The Bills losing to the Jags, Cowboys getting almost blown out by the Broncos, Titans beating the Rams. It was just all out of whack. So I think a lot of these players are going to return to their normal form, and we have the Saints taking on the Titans after this game. For the Saints, I'm just not trusting it. Trevor Siemian has no ceiling. For the Titans, I think Ryan Tannehill is a solid start. We actually saw them rely fairly heavily on the pass game in neutral situations, but it was a game script where they were ahead early, so they could just run the ball out. I think when they're in more competitive games, they're definitely going to be leaning on Ryan Tannehill, and that is great for his fantasy value. Next matchup is between the Jaguars and the Colts, and I'm sitting Trevor Lawrence. Just hasn't shown enough to warrant a start so far this season. And on the other side with Carson Wentz, he just continues to trend up and up. This is generally not a great Jaguars defense if you exclude what they did to Josh Allen. So I do think Carson Wentz is a nice safe floor and could have a really nice game here in Week 10. Then in these next two games, we just have a really rough stretch at the quarterback position, starting it off with the Lions-Steelers game. Jared Goff is just unstartable every single week. On the other side, I could see a potential argument for Ben Roethlisberger. I just see no ceiling there. He still doesn't look like a solid, competent NFL quarterback, and this is a decent matchup against the Lions. I'm still just not going to trust Big Ben this week. And then also in this next game, Browns-Patriots, not trusting either of these quarterbacks. Even though Baker Mayfield played well in Week 9, I just don't expect that to continue. He may play well, but just not well enough to be a solid fantasy asset. And then same thing with Mac Jones. both of these teams rely so heavily on the run that even if these quarterbacks play well, they're just not going to get enough opportunities on a consistent basis. That totally shifts in this Vikings Chargers game, where I trust both of these QBs in my lineup, Kirk Cousins and Justin Herbert. Not much to break down there. Kirk Cousins seems like a safe option every single week, and then Justin Herbert definitely had a bounce back game in week 9. Next matchup is between the Panthers and the Cardinals. On the Panthers side, Sam Darnold has just looked atrocious. It was really bad. It continues to get worse. I'm guessing he has to be benched sometime soon. I feel like they're not feeling great about giving up that second round pick, but he is totally unplayable in lineups. On the other side with the Cardinals, if Kyler Murray is back, he's definitely a start. However, I don't know if they're going to rush him back here in week 10. You saw what they did to the 49ers with Colt McCoy at quarterback, just dominated them. So I think it's potentially likely that they just let Kyler sit another week, but we'll just see. However, if Kyler Murray is not playing, even though Colt McCoy played well, I just wouldn't trust him in this game. Backup quarterback against a really solid Panthers defense just doesn't seem to be a good recipe. Then we've got the Eagles traveling to Denver to take on the Broncos. For the Eagles, I'm starting Jalen Hurts. Even though they've gone to a really run-heavy approach, Jalen Hurts is still going to get his on the ground. So it honestly may be a little bit better for him that they're not throwing the ball a million times a game, taking the pressure off of him just a little bit. So I think he's a pretty solid start this week. And then on the other side with Teddy Bridgewater, I'm going to be sitting him. He just doesn't have a very high ceiling, and his floor isn't all that high as well. So there's just not a lot of upside or safety with having him in your lineup, which in my opinion makes him a not great fantasy start. In this Seahawks Packers game, both of these guys making their returns, A-Rod from COVID, Russell Wilson from that finger injury, and I think they are both locked in and fired into your lineup. They are both mid-tier quarterback ones when healthy, so this should be a really good game overall. Then on Sunday Night Football, we have the Chiefs traveling to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders, and I'm rolling with both of these QBs in my lineup. Patrick Mahomes has been struggling, but I still think he can get it done for fantasy football. Derek Carr has just played fairly well the entire season. This is not a tough Chiefs defense, so I think he can keep that rolling here in Week 10. Then the final game of the week, Monday Night Football, Matthew Stafford and the Rams going up against Jimmy G and the 49ers. Matthew Stafford coming off his clearly worst game of the season on Sunday Night Football, played very poorly. I think he's going to bounce back. This 49ers defense is definitely not what it was, 2, maybe 3 years ago. They've been struggling, got carved up by Colt McCoy and James Conner. So I think Matthew Stafford is still a really nice start in your lineup. And then even though Jimmy G has played well the last few weeks, this is a tough Rams defense, and I really just don't trust the player all that much to begin with. So he is going to be a sit, and that is going to wrap it up for my quarterback start sits. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, ask me any questions down below in the comment section. Also, if you want to see more videos like this, go check out my running back and wide receiver start sits that I posted yesterday, and then my tight end start sits, which I'm going to be posting today as well. Thank you guys for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.